But yeah, so I do an article every issue called "Around the World with 80 Great Harmonica Players."
Oh,
So I
I'm
consider you
flattered.
one of those. No, absolutely. About 10 years ago, I was thinking I need to get serious on the chromatic harmonica. And then I was Googling and I saw some badass playing the upright bass with a gypsy jazz band. And just halfway through, went absolutely ballistic. And I still don't know how you do it. My chops are still premature compared to yours. So,
You're
um,
you're kind. Yeah.
no,
That's an old clip, right? That's from 2008, I believe. That was probably minor swing or
yeah.
um yeah,
I
long
remember
time
you were
ago.
outside. It looked like a gorgeous summer day, and you were just having a ball. And I thought,
Oh,
right, okay,
it's outside. Okay, okay.
yeah,
That's
outside in the
another
sunshine.
clip. Okay, yeah. Well, there's a bunch of clips with that band. We are not together anymore. We split up in 2015, so
Mm.
that's some years ago now. But yeah, we did a lot of videos and we played a lot with that band for a period of time. Um, but that's all history now.
Lo- that happens. That's the
Yeah,
business, right? Things move. Things move.
they do.
Um, just just for the readers, you're what I call a musical octopus. So as well as the chromatic harmonica in one hand, you've got the double bass in the other. I've seen you playing a saw, melodica, obviously tenor guitar as well.
Mm-hmm.
How many instruments do you play? Just yeah, off the top of your head.
Well, I differentiate. What do you say? I put them into different categories. You
Right.
might say because the bass was my main subject at the Royal Academy of Music in Denmark.
Mm.
That was my main subject instrument, double bass and electric bass, but
Yeah.
most of the time double bass. And the piano is like secondary instrument that everybody at the academy have
Yeah.
to play. So I play that naturally as well. But at some point I actually thought about becoming a pianist, and from time to time I still do that because
Mm.
when I'm into piano, I really like what piano is capable of.
Yeah.
Then again, I think that piano may be the hardest instrument to maintain a level
Yeah.
on
Sure.
of all the instruments I play.
Mm.
So I really, yeah, it's a strange instrument because if you just are going to play some chords and make an accompaniment for another player, that is fairly easy. But if you have to really get into thinking like a piano player, it's almost like you have to have 10 little brains according to
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
fingers, and that
Yeah.
takes like some time to get into.
Mm.
But yeah, but I play that as well, and in periods, no, in some yeah, time periods, or what do you say? I feel like a pianist, and then sometimes it's just
Mm.
off the board. I'm actually studying to become a church organ player, so that's
Ah.
that's
Okay.
another, yeah. But for the instruments that I tend to think that I'm able to play almost all the time, that would be bass, obviously, and harmonica,
Yeah. Of
and
course.
and tenor guitar now, I would say also,
Mm.
and piano also to to some extent. But and then there's all the other little phony instruments like kalimbas and saws and flutes
Sure.
and percussion sort of stuff, and obviously the orchestral harmonicas as well.
Yeah. Sure.
I actually practice the
Ah.
chord harmonica a lot. I like that
Yes, I
very
saw
much.
that. Yeah.
That's a fun, the long one, and
Yeah.
Susui
Yeah.
made
Yeah.
a new little one that I don't have,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure that I'm going to buy one either. I like the long
Mm.
one. It's also very visual.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and the bass
A few
harmonica to
months.
some extent. Sorry, what do you say?
No. No. Go on. Go on. Go on.
The bass
Bass harmonica as
harmonica
well.
to some extent, but that I think that is a hard instrument to dedicate oneself to because it's so fragile in a sense that if you
Mm.
play too hard, it blocks and and that sound has a lot of delay. So when you play it, the tone comes some time after. That makes it a difficult instrument to imply in different groups, I would
Mm.
say. But I do play it a little bit. I think it's fun to make that orchestral sound sometimes. I've done that
Yeah.
with some tunes,
Absolutely.
but yeah. So and then I sing. I don't consider
Yeah,
myself a singer, but I like to sing, and I do it a lot.
I've seen it. No, I've loved your videos, and I checked out your albums on Spotify as well. And I think you've got a perfectly decent voice. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
that's
But
kind of you. Thank you.
it makes me laugh. A few months ago, I interviewed Kim Boaz. I don't know if you know him
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah,
America, but
yeah.
he does. Yeah, and he was like, "I'm getting muscles from doing the chord harmonica." He was
For
like, "I'm
sure.
working out every time." Yeah,
That's
it
true.
cracked me up.
It you could
Oh,
also you could also say that it's an instrument that could lead to some sort of harmonica whiplash
yeah,
damage, because
yeah,
you're stretching your neck.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's a great instrument. He's a great bass harmonica player
He
too.
is. Yeah.
He's really one of the good ones. He seems like he's very dedicated to the instrument. Also,
Mm,
yeah.
yeah. I hope he's got a great career ahead of him. I really do. But like yourself. So tell me, like, I ask this of everybody I interview, A, how did you get into music? How was the love there? Obviously through the double bass. And then B, how did you wind up with the harmonica? It's,
Yeah,
it's the trick up everyone's sleeve. How did you come to it? Everyone's got their own story for it.
that's true. Well, uh, I actually began playing piano when I was 6 because my father he wanted me to play an instrument, and he played the piano himself when he was 6 years old and until he was 15 or something like that. He stopped practicing and playing because apparently another guy in his school became better than him, and
Oh, that's
that's
sad.
that's that's such a sad excuse. And but it has actually been something that has been a part of my drive for the most of my life, because he wanted
Mm,
me to play because he stopped, and
mm,
he couldn't teach me any other approach than just playing because you want to be the best, which is actually
mm,
a false goal, I would say.
mm,
It's a very very poor direction to lead yourself in when you're practicing and thinking about music. But I had to struggle a bit with that, and think about that a lot, and I still do actually. But so I began with the piano, and I went to a very sweet piano teacher, a lady. And at that point, I was not so keen on playing piano, maybe because it was classical music, and I wanted to play Jean-Michel Jarre synthesizer
mm.
music. And my
Yeah, sure.
father said, "You have to play classical." Okay, well, so I went there for a year and stopped. But I was in a school where there was a lot of music, so I kept playing music, but not, not so deliberately. And I
Mm,
also sang in a boys' choir. And at some point, a guy from my class, he began playing guitar a lot, and I was very inspired by that. And he sort of showed me that you could emerge into music
mm,
with just sitting with your instrument, and I think that was very inspiring to me. I must go back a little bit and say that my father was, despite that he sort of forced me to play piano at the age of 6, his record collection was a very big
mm,
deal to me, because we listened to almost all the music that I listen to today, classical, a lot of Randy Newman and Dire Straits and
mm,
Jimi Hendrix, Bob Dylan, all that kind of thing. And I love that a lot, and jazz as well. So that played a huge role in me being aware of music anyway. And when this guy from my class began really digging into the guitar and practicing Jimi Hendrix stuff, and that I wanted to play guitar as well. But he
mm.
was a little bit ahead of me, and we wanted to make a band. So I'm going to play the bass. That's the classical bass player
Uh,
story.
yeah. Yeah.
The second best guitar player plays the bass. So yeah,
But
but well, so yeah, I began playing the bass, and we played Cream and Jimi Hendrix, but I also played guitar at the same time. But I guess the bass just was sort of my instrument in that little world, and
mm,
therefore I spent most of my time playing on that instrument. Unfortunately, I developed a kind of inflammation in my wrists.
yep,
Um,
I've got it.
you know about that. That's a pain.
I've had tendonitis, and I
And then
I
I
don't play much guitar anymore.
I'm
I
sorry.
just play rhythm guitar. Oh,
Oh,
like I don't know a musician that's not in pain
no.
somewhere. But sorry, go on, go on.
No, but it's yeah, that was exactly it. And it actually came to a point also because I have this tendency to what do you say, focus too much on it. So all of a sudden it
Mm,
was not just in one wrist, it was in both wrists and in my elbows and my shoulders. And I felt I couldn't play anything, not even piano that I played a little bit also on the
yeah.
side. And so at some point, I just thought to myself, I want to play music. And at that point, I had had a break for about a year or something from almost all the
Mm.
instruments because of the tendinitis situation. And then I came to realize that if I played harmonica, that wouldn't involve my wrists in any way
Yeah.
that would hurt. So I picked up the diatonic harmonica when I was 15 or 16, and learned it from a short sort of course with
Mm.
a CD that I borrowed on the library, and yeah, that was fairly that was fairly quick, or I learned it fairly quickly. But learning the basics
Mm.
of the diatonic is not that demanding,
Mm.
and I played some blues and thought that was nice, and but I was also into jazz, and I had listened a lot to Jaco Pastorius, and
Ah.
when I heard his
Yeah,
record
yeah,
Word of
yeah.
Mouth and heard his version of Blackbird with Toots Thielemans on it, it was like
Yeah.
a revelation to me because I just, yeah, I was really drawn to the sound of the harmonica and of the fretless bass at the same time. And
Yeah, absolutely. Oh,
so
gorgeous.
so that was actually the beginning of something with the chromatic, because at that point I was getting better with my tendonitis situation there, and so I was beginning to practicing more and more on my bass, and that was nice. But I made a promise to myself that I would learn chromatic harmonica someday
Mm.
in the future. And this must have been 1992 or 3 or something that I made that promise. And in 2004, while being at the end at the end of my time at the Academy of Music, I bought a chromatic harmonica and started to learn how to play it
Uh-huh.
with my little experience from the diatonic that I played so many years ago at that point. So
Mm.
yeah, and basically if we that's a big jump, because I was
Yeah,
in high
sure,
school,
sure.
and then I applied
Yeah.
for the Academy of Music and was accepted, and I actually was there for 8 years. It's like a PhD sort of
Ah,
thing I
sure,
had
sure.
from that. But it's strictly practical. It's just all about playing music and theory, and being a good musician at the academy, as opposed to going to the university. If you study music at the university,
Mm.
it's more like reading books about music history and
Mm.
stuff, but not at the academy. So when I picked up the harmonica in 2004, that must have been 2004. I basically tried to imply all my theory knowledge, bebop knowledge, and licks from my jazz bass
Yeah,
playing
sure.
into the harmonica, and there were not really anybody around to teach me how to do it, and all
Mm.
I had was what I learned from that book so many years ago. So I actually thought
Mm.
that the U block technique was the most common technique when playing
Ah.
harmonica, and when I visited Brendan Power in 2007 or 8, I was amazed to know that is rarely used, really, and but it's the
Mm.
technique I still use most.
Ah.
And but then
Interesting.
yeah, but that's because I'm self-taught, so only from that, maybe in
Yeah,
that
sure.
book they thought that the U block technique was a good thing to learn, so I thought that was the only
Ah.
one. And but later on, I discovered the advantages of playing with a whistleblow technique. So I'm doing that
Mm.
also now. So I'm switching between those two. Um, I don't do tongue plugging and stuff like that. That's not true.
Ah.
I play octaves a lot,
Mm.
but not sixths and fifths. And a guy like
Sure.
Philip Yers is a monster when it comes to tongue
Mm.
plug. He's really good at that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I always struggled with that because I similarly didn't know what embouchure to use in the chromatic, and the guy I really like is Franz Kamel, the
Oh yeah,
classical guy.
yeah, the classical.
Yeah, and he was all about tongue blocking.
Okay.
Um, so I learned that.
Mm.
And I always do the funny face, But
Yeah.
then um, I met Cy Leo and Antonio Serrano, and they
Oh,
said everything we do is pucker. And I was like, okay, I'm doing it wrong. So I'm torn between two embouchures, and I find it really strange switching, and it's something I find fascinating. But yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah.
you were just able to apply your knowledge of music theory and jazz and classical and just bring it straight onto the chromatic. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
that was basically what I did. Yeah.
Mm.
Um,
Were there any?
obvious. Sorry. No, please ask. Sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say, were there any particular exercises that you did, or things that might help our readers or inspire people at home?
Yeah. Uh, I've done many things from that point in
Mm.
time, 2004 and until now. But in the beginning, it was just all about trying to figure out melodies, and learning the.
Mm.
I've always been very interested in the details of an instrument. I think that's the funny thing when you pick up a new
Mm.
instrument, is to just be very detail oriented and very nerdy about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I drew diagrams and memorized how the build up was, and compared it to the piano, which is an obvious thing to do. And
Yeah,
then I
sure.
just when I was on a run or cycling or doing something else, I would think about how would a certain tune look like in, for instance, D major or an E major or an F
Sure.
major, and visualize it, and then obviously play it also. But it was all
Yeah.
about trying to figure out melodies in the beginning. But then I was very fortunate in that sense that I was accepted for the last period of my time at the academy. I was accepted at the band in
Mm.
Canada, which is an amazing place. And I was so
Mm.
fortunate to have two semesters up there, which equals six
Mm.
months, really,
Yeah,
where I
yeah.
just had all the time in the world that I had missed out on until then because I was in school,
Yeah, sure.
to just really get into practicing. So I managed to practice 9 hours a day with different
Wow.
things, but most of the time, 3 or 4 of them were dedicated to the harmonica. And up there, I just
Mm.
played every scale I knew in every key I knew, or in all
Mm.
12 keys, and every scale that I had come across during my time at the academy, and sort of did that on a six-string electric bass and on the piano as well, to just lay down some sort of fundament of
Mm.
basically understanding how to reach for a note on the chromatic. And yeah, so that was in the beginning, just really important for me to be aware of the instrument down to the last little chromatic note. uh,
Yeah, sure.
but nowadays, I guess something that I always come back to when practicing is practicing arpeggios.
Oh.
I do practice scales still, but not so much because I feel that playing arpeggios is like a thing that the instrument almost isn't built for,
Mm.
despite for the few
Of
keys that,
course, yeah.
that that are very easy to play
Hmm.
arpeggios in. But
Mm.
it's a really good way to learn how to understand the instrument. So exercises like then that's in C major and so forth and so on, and
Mm.
and then in
Yeah,
all
yeah.
12 keys, and just staying aware of which note I'm on, and just yeah, do let it become, what do you say, automated. You have to
Yeah,
get
sure,
it.
sure, sure.
Yeah. So I do that a lot actually, and try to keep that what do you say, friendship between the piano and the chromatic harmonica, and I actually also play scales with my left hand and the same scale with my harmonica, just for fun.
Interesting.
But it's I was very inspired when I saw Howard Levy do that, but that's on a diatonic right, but that's like from another planet. But but I do that also, just nice and calm, no rush, just you being really still and patient, and playing the scales and playing it the same notes on the chromatic, and also accompanying myself with my left hand, playing, for instance, like a C minor chord with a C minor and a G minor, C minor, you know, that sort of stride kind of way to play with your left hand, and then improvising and playing the same scale things, and trying to do that at the same time, not for the sake of the circus act, but for the sake of the sound, really, and because that's one of the big advantages with the instrument. You are actually able to do something else with your left hand when you're playing it.
Yeah, sure.
So that's some things that I'm enjoying right now. I'm enjoying practicing stuff like that right now. That was a bit messy. That was the beginning and the end. Please ask for some more.
No, that's okay. I mean, can you give me any favorite memories? Because I know of memories of perhaps either your performances first, and then I'll ask you any memories of playing with other harmonica players. Because I know you play with Matthias Heiss. You mentioned you met Roger and came to the thing. You mentioned you met Brendan Power, for instance. So any particular happy musical memories of your own career, and then any happy collaborations? Might be what I'm looking for.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, Matthias Heiss is actually my student.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah, he was my student when he was 16 until he was 18, I believe, and he was in like a preschool to the Academy of Music, and he was only there for a year, then he dropped out. But he's like this really, really talented young guy. Not so young anymore, 28 or something now. That's still young, but
it's younger than me.
Me too, for sure. But we had a lot of fun together, Matthias and I, when I was his teacher, and when I was not his teacher anymore, we kept playing together and became friends and practiced and made this little duo, and I posted some of that on Facebook the other day, and we did a lot of stuff together. Unfortunately, we don't play anymore together, and we are not friends anymore either. But we did have some very amazing years together, which I'm very grateful for. Brendan Power is perhaps, to me, the most important guy when it comes to harmonica, because he was like the first harmonica player that I reached out to. There wasn't really there wasn't really anyone around in Denmark at that point. That's not true. I just didn't know about them.
Sure.
Later on, I learned that there were other players, but for some reason, it didn't occur to me that there was any players around in Denmark, and I needed a guy to help me with fixing harmonicas, because there wasn't anyone around either to help me with that. So I searched the web, and I stumbled upon Brendan, and I listened to his amazing Irish playing, and was really struck, and thought to myself, oh my God, this is amazing. I have to meet this guy. And obviously Brendan is like the kindest man on the planet, or something like that. And I was able to go to Canterbury and sit down with him and look how he treated his harmonicas, and learned a little bit about that. But we also played, and we had a good chemistry, and that was really a lot of fun. And just a short while after, we went to Frankfurt to demonstrate Suzuki harmonicas together in 2008.
Sure.
And after that, we did demonstration videos for Suzuki when he was working for Suzuki at that time. And we did a lot of those in 2000, and that must have been 2008. All of this. And then we saw each other from time to time, and we are still in contact. But it's been a while since we have met now. But I had some some of the greatest experiences, because they were like the first musical experience with me playing the instrument together with another harmonica player. That must have been with Brendan. I was really so excited about the sound that was making when two harmonica players sat down and played. So that was very intense. And that would be both at his home in Canterbury, but also at the Frankfurt Messe, and later I invited him to Denmark to throw a couple of concerts at a place I had with my ex-partner. I do that because she lives out there. So.
We've all got them. We've all got them. I can stay over there.
Exactly.
Sigmund Freud calls it repression. I love it. It fixes everything.
It's so true. Yeah. That's funny. That's funny. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
go on.
And so Brendan, must have been like the first real guy with whom I had the first great experience as a harmonica player. Then obviously I had a lot of great moments with that band that we talked about before, the Dixieland Gypsy Band, and we went to New Zealand twice and played down there, and many times to Norway and Sweden and Germany, and were a lot around actually. But in that band, I was not only a harmonica player, right? Yeah. I was also the singer, and I played a lot of bass, and to some extent, I would also say that even now, I don't think of myself as a harmonica player. It's like an instrument I bring along. Sometimes I don't even think of myself as a bass player. Sometimes I'm in a big musical existential crisis actually, because I don't commit to any of the instruments, but that's also an advantage sometimes. Anyway, that's what I think, because sometimes when you get too attached to an instrument, you sort of put your life on the line or something to prove that you are that instrument. And that is something that I think that is good to try to get rid of, because you are really the user of the instrument. You are using the instrument to do something with it, to express something. It could have been your voice or just your hands clapping down on the table or something, but that's really what it's all about. And sometimes I get so sick and tired of the music industry, and I'm sorry to say it, other musicians as well, when they are so tied up in being their instrument and that image that they are selling and all that stuff. And the worst point is when they start to believe it themselves, when they start to believe their own press quotes. That's terrible. Because music should always be something that brings people together, and musical colleagues as well. That's why I really love Brendan as well, because he's one of the few guys in the business or industry or whatever we should call it, who is so generous with his musicality, and with whom it's so easy to talk about everything, and he compliments you and you compliment him, and you get the feeling that you are collaborating on being a musician. And with a lot of other musicians, it's the competition. It's in the way. Yeah. And I hate that shit. I'm sorry, pardon my friends.
No, you're very welcome. Fuck it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, where was I? I was sort of talking my way away from something that we were talking about.
Like I said, it sounds like you're really just composing in your head and finding whatever medium you want to express it. Like I said, to me, you're an octopus. If it's that hand that needs to grab the bass, you pick up the bass. If it's that hand that needs the guitar, you get the guitar. Whatever it calls for you to express it and to communicate to the audience. That's what it seems like you're saying.
Yeah, that I to some extent I think that's what I'm trying to do, but I would not consider myself being like a sort of Jakob Collier kind of guy who seems to be able to just grab any instrument and just play it without rehearsing. You know, to me it's more about the process all the time. I don't think I have like a percentage of his talent, but it's like it's the process of digging into an instrument that I find interesting, and in that journey, I find things that I want to express and share with an audience. It's more like that to me, and the harmonica was like that too. Because actually, now that we're talking about it, I came to think of an old idea I had for myself with my harmonica playing, and that was because when I played almost only the bass, I was considered to be a good bass player, but also a very solistic bass player, and that's true because I was very into. Do you know a guy called Niels Henning Ørsted Pedersen? He was like this. He's like a Danish bass legend. He died in 2003, but he was amazing, and he was called the Viking. And he played with Oscar Peterson and a lot of the great jazz musicians.
The trio, right? Yeah,
he was so good,
Monster.
and he was a monster. And too bad, an alcoholic as well. But a lot of people in that business are, unfortunately. But his solistic playing, I was very inspired by. And that's cool, but most of the time, what a band need is not a bass player who plays solo all the time. They need a bass player who plays what a drummer at one point told me: the money notes. Those are the low notes. You don't go up there. It's like those are the expensive notes, and once you try to travel up the fretboard, they become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And the higher notes, they're almost for free. So it's not that I don't enjoy playing, the bass part. I like that, but actually when I sort of began playing more harmonica, which is obviously a solistic instrument and is all high notes, it was like I morphed a bit of my solistic bass player into the harmonica and was actually taking my bass parts more seriously after that, because now I had another instrument that actually earned more respect when I played a note on that, and if I played bass solo all the time. So that was a part of my journey with the harmonica, was about that, transforming my solistic self into another instrument that was more suitable for that job. I still enjoy bass solos a lot, but if you play like trio,
me too.
So it's not like I dislike them, and the sound of the double bass in the high area when you play those sustained notes, it's a beautiful sound. But it's also a restricted sound. Obviously, you can't do that all the time. But in the right context, it's a great sound that I still enjoy a lot.
Yeah,
but that goes to the harmonica as well, because
sure.
There are so many. I like the instrument a lot. I still want to explore it much more, but it's also a very restricted instrument in my opinion. If I compare it to, for instance, piano or all the tenor or the guitar, and that is actually some of the that is actually what I enjoy about playing more or different instruments, is that you sort of get to know them, and you get to know the advantages, and you can compare them, and you see that, okay, well, the advantages of the chromatic harmonica is mobility. It's a very easy instrument to carry along, and you can play it with one hand. That's cool too. It has tendency to be melancholic, and people like that. But in terms of playing fast, and in terms of being free in harmonies and stuff like that, it's a very restricted instrument. There are ways that you can go around that. You can play chromatic harmonica in other keys, and then some of the difficult keys becomes easier. But as a jazz musician, that hasn't always applied to me. I just wanted to play all keys. But even though I learn all keys, E major will still be a demanding key, whatever I do. And there's no way around it, because there's so many combinations in order to play a good E major key. And that's just how it is. And you can make no sweeps in that particular key, for instance. So I would say that a flute or saxophone, in that sense, is a much better solistic instrument. because you have that freedom to just play any note you want without having the obstacles like on a piano a little bit, because you have you have to think of the harmonica as a piano, and even though you don't use your fingers, the combination of where you are and if you have to blow or suck and push the button, that makes it less fluent. Yeah. And on a guitar, you can just play a scale by striking it one time, and you can roll up all the way, you know.
Yeah, the hammer-ons and pull-ups, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And cheating tricks like that. But obviously, the guitar has some other disadvantages, like overview. That's like perhaps the biggest disadvantage of the guitar, and that would be the biggest advantage of the piano, obviously. But that's, yeah, it all speaks to my internal nerd. I like to dig into that, you know, and try to figure out which instrument is suitable for what, and yeah, that's just some of the fun also.
Just a few more questions. I don't want to keep you for too long, but that's cool. There's a couple of questions that I like to just throw in as sideboards. If I was to sit you down and I wasn't here, nobody was here, what is a song that you never ever get sick of playing? And you know, whether it's on the harmonica or the bass or whatever, you're just always happy to play that song, and you know you should probably be practicing something else, or you should be working on your chops, but as soon as you pick up the instrument, that song comes out.
Do I have a song like that? Well,
or a few. It can be a couple, but that you just, you know,
there
never
are
get tired of playing it.
There are a couple of jazz tunes that I always love to practice, and I probably will practice for the rest of my life. I would say that could be Snow Peas by Phil Markovich. Toots Thielemans played that with Bill Evans on on Affinity.
Affinity, yep.
Affinity, amazing. Version they did on that. I just love that. That particular CD has actually been like a cornerstone of my just understanding of the harmonica, and also because I'm a very big Bill Evans fan, and just the sound on that record, I love it a lot. So Snow Peas and Giant Steps also, I like that tune for some strange reason. It's like an Apple design. Giant, the melody is like an Apple design, you know. It has that simplicity. It's actually a beautiful melody. When you take it down in tempo, you could play it like a ballad, you can play it fast, you can do anything you want with it, and that is like what do you say, the trademark of a very good melody.
Yeah,
you can do anything with it. So I enjoy that tune a lot, and it's also a lot of fun to play. I haven't come around playing it in all 12 keys yet, but that's on my to-do list, actually.
I'd rather you than me, if I'm honest.
I would say Footprints also by Wayne Shorter.
Yeah.
I love that tune.
And somebody called that somebody played that at Jam recently. I didn't have the sheet in time, so I didn't know it, and I didn't dare go up. But I was just like, this is lovely.
Yeah,
this is a lovely piece.
It's a lovely piece, and he has moved on, sadly. But okay, he was an old man. But very, very beautiful song. Blue Set also, I love playing Blue Set and Donna Lee. Those are just classic tunes, really. But they are on my iReal Pro app playlist, and I play them a lot. But some things that I've begun practicing actually a lot, that is a lot of fun, I think, is playing the bass part with my feet while playing the harmonica at the same time. Because when practicing to become a church organ player,
of course, yeah,
I've begun playing bass with my feet, and I bought this Suzuki Hammond bass feet unit that has this more electric bass kind of sound to it, and it's fun to play like simple 2-beat bass lines with your feet while improvising on top. I've done that with giant steps, and not in a fast tempo yet. That takes a while. But minor swing and some of the stuff I played with the Dixieland Gypsy Band, and it's a very, yeah, that's just a very fun exercise. So
You're literally proving my point that you're an octopus now. Like you couldn't be more.
Oh, that's
You're
true.
just yeah. Oh, I love
Actually,
it. That's super cool.
at one point, I have made a video about that, but I played at this Christmas show just this November and December, and there were 3 tunes where I played the bass part with my feet, accompanied myself with my left hand, and played harmonica with my right hand. And
Wow. Yeah.
you can see it there. I can send a link. It was a lot of fun, but also something that I cornered myself a little bit with those what do you say, assignments or jobs, because I had to do it in front of an audience 45 times. So I did that, but yeah, then you get a little nervous. But all the things that you get nervous by is also something that strengthens you, right? So
of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, just a couple more because I'm really enjoying this conversation. But if I was to say 1 or 2 musical memories on any instrument that you really just absolutely loved, you're in pure heaven, what would they be? I know, take your time, no rush.
That's actually difficult to answer, because it would have been easier when I was at the academy or before. But now I've been a professional musician since 2006, and I've never worked with anything else. So some years I have been on a stage 250 times, so it's like there's an everyday aspect of it to me. But that doesn't mean that I don't have great experiences with playing. Obviously I have, but it's been, I can't really point out a specific situation anymore, but I can point out the feeling I get when I enjoy it very much. And that is that feeling of the world just disappearing, and you immerse yourself into playing, and you look your colleagues, your musical friends in the eye, and it just feels good. Sounds very simple, really, and not that wise, but that is just that is still something that I'm just going for. And I would say that experience happening just with another guy in my living room, or it be on a big stage in front of 2,000 people, doesn't really make a difference to me. It's the same basic, what do you say, tilstand. Oh fuck, what is that
feeling?
called?
The buzz.
Yeah. You
the
could say that. That's the same feeling, or the same place that you get into, whether it be in front of a lot of people, or just being 2 guys in the room, or just yourself being in the room and feeling like I'm very fortunate.
In the groove.
Yeah.
In the groove.
And just enjoying it. Actually, there's a quote in Danish. I don't know if I can translate it that well, but I will try. That I like a lot. And this one guy told me at some point that the whole thing about playing in front of an audience is being good at taking that small room where you are with yourself, and immersing yourself into whatever you do, and taking that in front of a lot of people. So like taking the small room to the big room, but you're still having a good contact to that small room. And that's also being very vulnerable at the same time, because you're actually letting people share something that is quite intimate. And I actually think that that's what we need to go for as much as we can. But there's a tendency as a musician that is trained and wants to succeed and stuff like that, to hide behind technical abilities, and 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 the better you get, you also become worse sometimes if you're not willing to share that vulnerability. I'm very preoccupied with that thought, actually. And that is perhaps why I also on the side have been very interested in theater, and I'm a little bit of an actor too. Also, I didn't went to actor school or drama school, but I'm so fortunate to be working on a theater a lot, and through that I have been able to become an actor in a lot of the plays that I've been with, to some extent, to the extent that I'm capable. Obviously, I've spent my time on something else than being a great actor, but the whole thing about using what actors use is something that I find very usable when you're on a stage being a musician. Because, for instance, just people staring at you, watching you, that is something that you sometimes have to produce in a play, and nothing else but that. But being a musician on stage, you think you have to live up to everything, you have to produce your whole worth while being there again and again and again and again, and that can make you very intense, and in a not so good way, actually. And so that is something that I'm very inspired of, also trying to dig into that calmness that comes from just being comfortable with a lot of people being there, listening, watching. And you're just, maybe you're playing something, maybe you're playing a lot, maybe you're not playing at all, but you're still there with your presence. Okay, this could be like another interview entirely, but
it's very important. It's very important.
To me, it's like the most important thing, actually.
The philosophy is phenomenology, isn't it? It's just sort of experiencing the moment and communicating that. Really fascinating. No, I find that very interesting. If you cannot read the energy in the room, and for you as a musician to embody that energy, and like you said, not to get an ego and become, trying to show off constantly. Nobody wants to see somebody have a wank. I will edit this bit out, but I think that it's so crucial. I think it's the thing that cannot be taught, but only experienced. You can give people advice on it, but you still have to just be pushed on the stage and be taught to feel it. Okay, one more question, then I will say thank you, and I will stop recording, and then I'd like just a quick chat just to do some admin stuff. My last question is always the same. Is there anything that you're really, really looking forward to for the future? In your career, on any instrument?
It's a funny thing, because I don't really have any goals with music anymore, other than being able to keep on making my living from playing. I've done that now for 20 years, and I hopefully I can continue doing that, because it's a lot of fun. But I don't have I don't need to go to Carnegie Hall. I don't need to go to New York and play with the great ones. It's not an urge I have. Matthias, my old student and sadly former friend, is a very ambitious young man, and I think he will take on the world. Actually, I think he has the level of ambition to do that, and also the talent as well. But I'm just very preoccupied with the thought of, you don't have to prove anything. You just have to focus on enjoying. Obviously, you have to earn money and make a living. But on that account, I don't have that many, what do you say, expensive thoughts about something is better than something else. If people need music, I will deliver music. And I like playing lots of different kinds of styles. I'm better at some and worse than with others, but if they can use what I'm doing, I will deliver, and then I'm doing what I want to do. So it's like that for me. So yeah, that was sort of a vague answer, actually, but
No, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful answer.
Oh, thank you.
Beautiful answer.
That's how I feel about it, actually. I also wrote a song about that, and I can link it to you because it's you want to be famous, and it's actually about this, what we're talking about right now.
Mm, I love that. No, please do send that to me. Like I said, the email, I'd need some photos for you anyway. But I will say I'll stop recording there and say thank you very much. But do stay on, and thank you very much, Jake.
Yeah, you're welcome.